So this is Damian Irvine talking about his 4th anniversary here at Ebbsfleet United. And a year ago we sat down in the dugout at Chippenham Town before the National League South game there. And we reviewed your opening 3 years, which covered COVID. It covered the recruitment of Dennis Kutrib and the season so far last year. And of course the demotion from the National League that happened. All those things you dealt with. Now the next year, the last 12 months, has probably been as eventful as the first 3 years.
It has been. But I think when we first sat down 4 years ago, Chaz, that what's been eventful in the last 12 months has been a football club and football club related. And I think when we first sat down, one of the main things you and I talked about that the fans needed and wanted, and rightly so, and the club needed, was to be just getting on with football and talking about football problems and positives and all of that. And because we'd had COVID and we'd had previous issues at the club where football wasn't the main topic of discussion. So the way you describe that, the last 12 months we've had here, it has been eventful, but for football reasons. And I guess that's what we're here to be about, isn't it? Football at the end of the day.
So after the Chippenham game, you went on to secure promotion, and what was that like for you? I mean, what was the feeling around the club when that happened?
Look, relief was the main driver for me, given what we'd been through previously as a club, and the supporters had been through. They missed huge chunks of the last season or two through COVID and not being able to watch live, and we'd had the demotion. We'd been through all of that, so all you ever want to do is your job in terms of, get where you need to be as a club. And that promotion last year was a great relief to deliver that as a club for the supporters, for the players and the staff. Funnily enough, it felt a little bit unfair on the nature of the promotion that was my personal emotion and feeling, and because it was won so well and so dominant, it felt a little bit unfair for the players and the staff and the management and the supporters that it didn't have this great big sort of firecracker event of what a playoff final something could, because it was won so well and so dominantly, and it was a great day here, the day that it was nailed on points-wise, which we're always looking to get to before we could take the foot off the gas and be really satisfied, given what had happened in the previous year in the playoff final. So, yeah, it was a great sense of achievement. And I think the supporters and the media certainly properly recognised the gravitas of what was a very, 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 very good season of football. And it's in the history of the club, very few titles in the last 50, 75 years. And the dominance of it, which was heard all around the football world, was really impressive, and I'm very proud of it for everyone.
Moving on into the season, we experienced the, shall we say, resignation of the chairman, the owner of the club, Dr. Al-Humaidi, who still sits in his seat in the director's box. He was there on Saturday for the game against Oldham, so he's still a big part of the club. But losing the chairman midway through the season isn't helpful, but it was more of a technicality rather than anything else, I believe. Maybe you could confirm that.
Oh, it's not unhelpful, and I say that purely because of the man he is and the family that they are that support and own this club and back it ultimately through KEH Holdings. So it is a technical thing. It's a paper thing. It's a protective measure for the football club as well, where we can. My job and our job is to insulate the club and protect the club at all costs from anything. And I think whenever you've got other business interests going through a hard time, wherever you can create delineation between common directors and separate that, it's always a very good thing for the football club. And ultimately, I think that's what fans want and expect, is that, the sovereignty of the football club is always at the forefront. That's how it is. And as you say, the support operationally, nothing's changed from that period. Look, I'm fully cognizant of when a company's house thing comes through or there's news of a change at that level, why our supporter base would be concerned or raise the question, given that mid-history of the club, and some tough times before. But, since that's occurred, there hasn't been any demonstrable change, and I don't expect there to be. We enjoy the full and strong support of the Al-Ahmadi family, and as you say, Dr. Abdullah still a supporter of the club, and is always welcome at this football club, and will always be here supporting, as he was during every single game while he was chairman. And his cousin has taken over, who was part of the KH group as well, who's here in the club this week, saying hello and catching up. But no big changes there, Chaz.
So the season continues and the results continue to be indifferent, one or two highlights, but one or two low spots as well. And you mentioned earlier how loyal the club has been through COVID and other issues, and obviously that loyalty was shown as was extended to Dennis Kutrib, because the other clubs, I'm sure, they would have pulled the plug on the manager maybe a lot sooner than the time Dennis was given. And that must have been a difficult period for you, because you wanted to give the manager every chance to turn things around, but the results just weren't coming, were they?
No, and it's hard to see and hard to watch, I know, for the supporters. And from inside, it's hard to see when, despite the best of intentions and the best of hard work, we're not the first football club to fall on hard times on the pitch in performance. Football's very cyclical. It really is, from the Premier League down. Maintaining year on upward trajectory and good performance on the pitch is very, very difficult to do. We had a very good 3.5 years of it. But unfortunately, through the best of intentions, you've spoken to Dennis after every single game, Chaz, and there's never been a lack of intent or work ethic. He's one of the most talented managers below the championship, included in the championship in this country, and will be. But if he can't change things and say the same things after games, we need to get wins, we need to stop errors. Then a new voice is what was needed. That's the bottom line. That's all it is. Players have to hear what the manager is saying, and Dennis was saying all the right things to them, showing them all the right ways, which is okay if you go win, lose, because it works some weeks, and the words have resonance and they get into you. But if those words and techniques and things aren't having an effect because the result is still no points after 6 weeks, 7, 8 weeks, I think we went quite a bit longer than that. It's human nature that it's not sinking in. It's not filtering into performance, however that is. And that's high performance management. That's football. It's extremely traumatic at a football club when you got such a loved colleague, such a great person, two great people involved that unfortunately hold the role which has to be the catalyst of change. Very, very difficult, and a horrible week last week for everyone involved, and that's football and that's performances.
So Dennis said, Auf Wiedersehen to Ebbsfleet United, and a new chapter began and a search for a new manager. In the meantime, you've appointed interim head coach Danny Searle.
Yep.
Why Danny Searle, and how did that come about?
Very simply, we didn't expect not to have Dennis in the technical area last week, and we've got a great senior playing group here at the club, and my view was that if the reason for a change was that a new voice is needed, then promoting from within, or just in the interim period having those senior players, our coaching staff that remained here, taking over, wouldn't have created that delineation, that fresh change. I mean, the group obviously needed to see that we're not messing around. This is really important, and this change to snap the performances out of that funk it had gotten into, that repetitive nature without success. It needed visible change. And Denny he threw his hat in the ring, basically, like 138 people have since last Monday. And I'm very big on process. I think that was shown when we appointed Dennis, and it reaps rewards. It found one of the great young managers that England's going to see. We weren't blessed, and I didn't have the luxury of that time to go through that particular process for last week or even this weekend. It's in place, but Denny was a part of that, and I was very honest with Denny, and I said, I don't know if you're in the process or if you'll be successful in the process, but given your personal circumstances, you're just back from the Czech Republic. He's a very good coach. He's a different voice. He's a very good assistant in Enwar Uden, who's involved in the England C setup. They both know the league very well. And people with experience in UEFA qualifications and have been at different clubs, top tier in Ireland and the Czech Republic, coming in and viewing the players that we've got, viewing the performances the club have had, and putting that together in what they view as football people and good coaches is the best setup. I think was very valuable for the team and the squad to hear that different view and different voice, not overly greatly removed from what Dennis was thinking and doing in so many ways either. So that made sense, and it went very well last week, but so it should. The players lost their leader. We lost our manager. I lost a good friend from the club. We all did. And so there must have been an upside. There had to be an upturn. What happens now going forward is very, very important for the playing group that continues. So at the stage we're ready to appoint a first team manager permanently, we will. Has to be right. It's a huge appointment. In the interim, Denny remains in situ, and then we'll be overseeing the team this week and into the Chesterfield match as well. And we'll see from there.
Another big situation that the fans are really wanting to know what's going on is where the club stands with its application for developing the stadium.
Yeah. And
I know that's been a protracted set of circumstances, and it seems to be extending a lot longer than you'd want. Yes,
it is. A long process. Not through lack of support at Gravesham Borough Council, I must add. We've got great bipartisan support there, but John Burden, the leader there, Stuart, Bobby, everyone in council there are hugely positive around what our plans are. Gravesham Borough Council has launched a regeneration strategy in the last 2 years. We launched what we wanted to do just prior to that. And what we're trying to do here in the Brownfields area of Northfleet Industrial Area in our football club fits right smack bang in the regeneration needs and the want of Gravesham Borough Council. They're very keen to leave legacy. They're very keen to leave Gravesham Borough as a destination that people want to visit the borough. I think everyone would admit, with respect, we lack the need to come to Gravesham if you're from outside or using the fast train from London, and this development really puts that in place. So they've been very, very supportive. The process is cumbersome in the UK. I'm not going to skirt around that. It is very cumbersome and it's very expensive up front, Chas. The onus on the applicant with property developing here in the UK to put so much up front in terms of consultancies, surveys, planning, mapping of all different regulatory bodies. I'm talking waterways, Natural England, highways, national highways, transport authorities. There are so many bodies, and the onus is on the applicant to satisfy and fulfil all of these regulatory bodies' needs and requests. And they all individually, I don't want to bore people, it's really important that they all have their master plan, overarching UK-wide theories, all of these bodies. Flood protection is a big one, obviously, with future global warming and all of this. So they have a very rigid, general view on all applicants. And our job then So we put an application in, and all of these national bodies say, well, it has to have a retaining wall of 9 metres. Now, it's not realistic for all property to have a 9 metre retaining wall. So then what happens is when we put this application into the council, all of those regulatory bodies have to respond. And I might surprise people when I say that a lot of these government agencies are not rapid in responding. They tell us 4 or 6 weeks, and then that response has to come in, and then we get a chance to it's a negotiation. Well, we can't do this wall, but we can do this for you. We can change that roundabout here. For example, we all know that the estuary river runs into the Northfleet Harbour here, and it's been subterranean for some time. It's culverted. It's in a big concrete box, and it goes through. We were looking to open air some of that for the local area to bring it back to life a little. They wanted that fully deculverted, so we actually acquiesced to that and went back with new plans to make sure that the river sees light all the way up to just over near Car Park C, which will be lovely for the area, expensive for the development, and it changes the feasibilities. That doesn't happen in a phone call. That takes weeks and weeks and months to redo and then resubmit. Then they still have an opinion. Well, could you not do it this? No, hang on, we've sort of compromised enough. That's just one agency, and there are a number of those agencies. So unfortunately, what has to happen is, before it goes to a planning committee, all of those agencies need the right to this process. And each one of those could delay 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. And it's frustrating, but we don't want to sit in front of a planning committee and have our Gravesham Borough Planning Department determine the success or otherwise of these plans without all of those authorities having the full right and going through the right process and having all the letters saying we withdraw our objections. There it is. We don't want to do that. So we're getting there. Last I've been told 28th Feb is for that period. Fingers crossed that all of that gets in time. But yeah, it's slow and it's expensive. We've spent a lot of money as a developing partner in progressing this plan as well.
Thank you for that clarification.
Wake everybody back up now. We've talked about a planning process because it is long, and I apologise, but it's important that everyone knows the detail.
Moving on to another question raised by the fans. I think I know the answer to this, but why are injuries not publicly announced? Will this change under new management?
Depends on who the manager is, I think. Look, the easy thing is to say that it's a management decision to not give too much away. I think that does a disservice to Dennis and Chris. That's not the main reason. If I'm honest, the main reason is they're so subjective, and the timelines on them are so, they chop and change so much, Chaz. And we had who got injured at Maidenhead? Craig Tanner got injured in his knee at Maidenhead. Now, Craig's had history of knee problems, and prior to here and here a little bit. In the initial diagnosis and fear for that, he was worried, and rightly so. There's very little we could say about that in the next 7 days. It needs scanning, it needs to recover and see where it's at. Now, thankfully, it's turned out to be not a bad diagnosis, which is fantastic. So it might be 10 days or 2 week period. Not the 4 or 6 that it might have been. So I think it's more around the lack of certainty with the 4 or 6 that are there. But having said that, Dennis was absolutely brilliant for this football club in terms of transparency. He never hired away from a question. He probably didn't want that on YouTube so that 15 managers could dissect it and read into it, because we do it. And so he probably didn't want to go to that depth, but if somebody asked him, he'd tell them, if that makes sense. So pre-game, he always, and very few managers at any level I've ever seen would give the time up 45 minutes before kickoff. He'd go and speak, everyone in the lounge, public can come up there, sponsors, and he would often, I don't know, Katie, he would always talk injury, because I would ask him, prompt him, who's not available, he should be all right on Saturday. So it wasn't a secret. I think it was just around more putting that on record, so for others to look at. But I don't know going forward. That really is a management call and what whoever's in the seat wants to do.
Looking at your hat as chief executive, obviously you're concerned not just about the well-being of the first team and the staff in the club, you're also involved in all the commercial activities. And one of the questions the fans are asking about how you plan to develop the commercial activities, which will obviously help towards the club becoming sustainable going forward, financially sustainable. And that includes how can you monetise the facilities you've got here in the main stand before the ground's developed. How can you make more use of events being held here at Stonebridge Road?
Don't know what you were like coming in today, Chaz, but we were very lucky to get this room to do this today. We've got long-term training courses in here for the last 3 weeks. That'll be ongoing for 6 weeks. Paramedic training, which is great. They use the car park to learn how to park ambulances in the stairs and all this. That's been ongoing for a number of time. We've got school kids down with Phil Moss and the community program utilising the boardroom today. We had birthday parties on the weekend. It's busy. We're limited in terms of our size in this particular stand, and that's where, as part of the new stadium, people talk around 8,000 seats. Why do you need them? The large conference and events portion of that, which the club will maintain and own going forward and have all revenues, would be massive. We could sell what we're doing here 10 more times if we had more space. Where we can do more in utilising this is in the evenings. So we've tried to start a bit of a once a month, club sports bar night up in the main lounge. We had karaoke last month, and there's a quiz night the guys are working on now. That can be more utilised in what happens here midweek. We've got Wednesday, tomorrow, a large networking event. So no, this is very well utilised and driven. Excuse me. I think commercially, got a front of shirt sponsor in Virtue, which we didn't have previously, which is excellent, on top of Cufflink and their naming rights partnership here in the stadium. We've got great sponsorship that's coming in now in the women's section in their front of shirts and the juniors. Our pitch boards have been very strong. The two large ones at either side of the plough were never sold, I think, in the last little while. Funnily enough, they're both sold at really good money now. And the reason they're sold is probably the Fleetwood Cup game really gave us a reason to get partners on board for that. And then they stuck with us. So little things like that always really help. We can always do more and better, but commercially the club's in a good place.
On to, you mentioned the ladies team in the academy. Is the women's team going to be continuing into next season? There seemed to be some doubt amongst the fan base that it was a commitment that the club were still behind them. And with the academy, there's obviously an issue as well with Fleet Leisure and the club's training facilities. Perhaps you can explain where that's at. Yeah,
I don't know why there'd be any concern, or I don't know where any supporters would get whether we'd be supporting the women's team going forward. We made a very strong commitment there, and that's ongoing. All the girls were down actually for Saturday's game to support the first team, and no, that's going strong. Obviously, we had a change of manager there previously last year, but that's more through work. The women's game is still relatively amateur. It's a part-time situation, so people come and go that have day jobs, and I get all that. It's a big cost centre for the club. It doesn't make money, but that's fine. We're very supportive of that, and we'll keep pushing that. In terms of Fleet Leisure, look, it's not a problem. The only idiosyncrasy of that relationship is that we don't own the academy, that it's owned by Nathan and Deddy Kedwell, great friends of the club. And that relationship in the last 4 years I've been here was built. There wasn't one probably previous. Unfortunately, the way the Kent Senior Cup has worked out this year, we probably, in our exit from things like the trophy and the FA Cup early, have meant that Kent Senior Cup games probably don't need to use as many of the youngsters as we would like, and Dennis certainly did during his tenure. But look, it's good. They've had some delays up there with construction, and I feel for them because construction costs and the weather we've had the last 12 months hasn't been easy to nail that on. but they're doing ever so well with it. The pitches are up and running now. We will be utilising that more and more, and that should be, all things being equal, our base from summertime going forward.
And finally, from me, it's just how important is it to avoid relegation this season from the National League? And do you think the club can do it? And do you have a final message, a closing message for the supporters?
I think the club can do it. Of course I can. The points are there on the table. Someone's going to take them. We need to make sure it's us. For me, the importance of retaining a National League status is more born out of the effort that went into getting it. Of Dennis, of Chris, of the squads that did that, of every staff member here, of the financial support the chair and his family gave to that. So that's the importance. I mean, the heartbreak all of those supporters felt down at Dorking, and when the season was done, points per game, the message I had at that time of people doing whatever they could to try and write to the National League. So the desperation and the heartache that went into achieving that status, for me, that's why it's important to stay in it. It's too hard to get. It's too hard to get for 12 months, so hard work to get up there. So that's the importance. But we're a football club that deals with what we deal with, and whatever the future holds. Look, there's so many variables. It doesn't matter. But, the goal at Oxford was offside. And the referee wrote to us and said that. Well, so it doesn't matter. But that just shows you that whatever happens, there are elements out of your control. That we found that out 2 seasons ago down at Dorking, and we'll find it out again. But no, I think we can stay up. We have everything we need to stay up. That's important. So we're talking amongst the playing group, and everything that happened last year was magnificent. I genuinely believe, and I know the players do, that staying up now in this 14 games we've got ahead, the feeling of satisfaction, the feeling of accomplishment in that will be massive. And I think that's where we need to be as a club and as a supporter base now. There comes a stage where you have to stop being down on the fact we got where we got to. Here we are. But the positivity and the momentum that can come with a real push to get out. I've experienced it once before with Notts County in 2014 season. We managed to stay up on the last day. They're special times. We've had some special times as football club recently in a different way through circumstances. Now we have to get off the ropes, and the achievement and the sense of achievement we can get as a club from doing that. I could tell you there'll be more tears and jubilation when we get over that line in the next 14 weeks here than there perhaps were last year in doing that sense of achievement, that relief. This can be glorious, and so we need to focus on that now. And I felt on the weekend the supporter base was with us on that. We can't point out faults. We can't sit and say bad touch. We can just applaud the crunching tackle that comes to make up for it. Yeah, and that, it was happening on Saturday, and that's dirty, ugly, roll the sleeves up National League football. And I think as a club we can do it on that basis.
Well, let's hope you do, and that we're sitting here in a year's time looking back on another successful season in the National League. So until then, thanks, Damian, and good luck for the next 12 months.
Thanks, Chaz. Appreciate it.